the thing that is keeping a lot of people from success is their relationship with failure. They hate it. They avoid it. They will even not try as hard. So the ego in them can say, "Oh, I failed because I didn't try hard. I didn't try hard." They don't set high goals because of the odds of them failing. They don't go after what they want because the failure is going to be so painful. And we say, yes, failure is painful. And in some cases, it's embarrassing. However, the way to learn, the way to use failure as fuel is to pull as many lessons as you can from it.
Justin, thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to dive into you, your story, and 10 high performance habits that you've discussed previously in the past.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I've loved listening to you and some of your guests on the show, and I've learned a lot from them and from you, and I'm excited to be part of this conversation.
Which episodes have you listened to?
I listened to recently Alex Hormozi, who was awesome. I listened to oh my goodness, he wrote Step Your Game Up. Oh my gosh, he's
Alan Stein Jr.
Basketball. Alex Stein. Yeah, Stein. Yeah, I learned that Alan Stein. I learned from Alan Stein. I love listening to his work as well. And I was just listening to one this morning, Annie Duke.
Yeah.
You with Annie Duke, who's wonderful with quitting, the science of quitting, and just great conversation.
Yeah, and I like to collect these people who are really thoughtful and interesting and insightful, and you're certainly on that list. And 11 years ago, you put out a YouTube video that said two things, basically. One is I help people focus on what they can control. And two, I help people do things with purpose, on purpose. And what I love about that is that was 11 years ago, but from doing research for this episode, I could imagine you saying that today. Is that accurate? Would you still say those same words today?
It's really amazing hearing you say that, because any person, whoever, whatever you do in life, you want to evolve. You want to be able to look back and say, wow, I've evolved from there. I've gotten better from that moment. And I think over the decade plus of my work, working with a number of different audiences and different populations, I always hope that I'm progressing and getting better. But sometimes we can add so many things and learn so many things that you get away from your original first principles. And when you just said that, that's something I wrote 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. I forgot that I wrote that. And I think you're absolutely accurate. Yes, maybe I need to get back to saying that's essentially what I do, because it has stayed the same. Yes, helping people focus on what they can control and helping people do things on purpose, with purpose, I think is the crux, the basic foundation of the work between myself and those I work with.
If I notice somebody do something for over a decade, it usually to me indicates that it happened far before the decade actually started. Meaning you had been thinking about those concepts were in you to some extent to help people with their mind and performance. When did you know for the first time, oh, this is something I should dedicate my life to?
That's a great question, because I always tell people I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up until I was almost 30 years old. And that's having, I was married at 21, had 3 kids under 3 by 24. Our life was a mess. My wife and I were like, what are we doing? I was making $18,000 a year as a teacher, just trying to figure it out. And I'm in my mid-20s, married with 3 kids and having no clue what I'm doing. I was searching and scrambling, but I knew I loved to teach. I loved it, not because I wanted to be the guru, the sage on the stage. I enjoyed the guide on the side, helping people navigate their own problems and navigate and find answers, solutions to their own questions. And whether it was being a baseball coach, I was a waiter for a little bit, a server at a Mexican restaurant, and I enjoyed that. I was a church missionary for 2 years in the jungles of Nicaragua, and I loved doing that. So I realized it didn't matter what I was teaching, what I was doing. I loved people. I love to help people, and I love doing it in a way to where I get out of the way to help them answer their own questions. And so I think, yes, my dad is a coach. He was a coach for years. My mother loved teaching children, and so I think I watched them, I copied them, and I think that was the basis that jump started me into this career.
Was there a moment? A moment you knew?
I don't think there was a moment I knew. I think it was less. I think there's that term, things happen gradually and then suddenly. I think it's less of a light switch that turned on and more of like the sunrise coming up. All of a sudden it's gradual until it gets brighter and brighter and brighter and stronger. And I think it was more of a gradual, it just over time. And with that being said, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years. Maybe it evolves into something else. And maybe the foundation of helping people is going to be the same, but maybe it might happen through a different medium, different vehicle.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you have built this foundation for yourself of, it almost seems like you're coaching people. And when I'm reading quotes from you and I'm listening to you on previous podcasts to research this, it seems like, wow, this guy is talking like a head coach would talk about players. And it's a similar sort of idea. And so I want to go through some of these principles and some of these ideas because I think they're so valuable for people. And I think if you actually live the statements that you outline, your life will actually get better. And so in 2018, you highlighted 10 high performance habits. And I would love to go through the list with you so that we can help people live a better life. How does that sound?
Let's do it. That sounds like a plan.
So the first one, win the morning. What's that all about?
Yeah, we each get 86,400 seconds a day. And the reason I like to narrow it down to the seconds is because if you look at your watch, it just every single second, it just keeps going. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Doesn't matter how much money you have. Doesn't matter how talented or not you are. We each get 86,400 seconds a day. And the best in the world, the most successful in the world, are able to use those seconds better than the rest. They're able to really focus and really leverage and squeeze out the benefit of it. Now, everyone's seconds may look different from people. Some people have children, some people don't, depending on your job, depending on where you live, depending on your health. And so given your current circumstances, you want to be able to maximize that. Now, the morning is really important too, in my opinion, because that jumpstarts a new day. A phrase that we say in our home is, you know what the best part about today is? And my kids now they're all teenagers. Now they roll their eyes like, we've never lived this one before, Dad. Yes, you're right. We've never lived this one before. And so it's not just another Monday. It's not just another Tuesday. It's whatever you want to make of it. So let's start strong. Now, the win the morning routine is basically a routine to help you get your body, get your mind, get your spirit, whatever you need, primed to be the best version of yourself throughout the rest of the day. I view it as a rocket taking off into space. You start off really strong, you get those first principles going, and then you go. Now, the first thing about winning the morning is some people used to say, what you would slide into my DMs or even publicly, they'd be like, I don't need to wake up at 3 a.m. I don't need to wake up at 7 a.m. Sleep is important. And I say, you're absolutely right. I'm not saying win the morning means wake up at 3 or 4. Optimize sleep. You need to optimize sleep. And whenever you get up, I'm not the wake up in the morning monitor. Whenever you need to wake up, because there's some people who have little children they need to tend to, and they can't wake up at 6 or 7 and the night shift. And so whenever you do wake up on purpose. What are you going to do in the first 90 minutes of your day? Or maybe you need to shrink it, 60 minutes. Maybe it's 30 minutes. But to live life and live your morning by design and not by default. Do what you do on purpose with purpose. And we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. But basically, what does it look like? It might be meditating. It might be working out. It might be reflection. It might be journaling. It might be stretching. It might be you fill in the blank. And you're going to have to experiment a little bit. You see what works, what doesn't work. And I think one other tip to win the morning, you want to win the night. You want to make sure at night, get a good night's sleep. Make sure you have a good nighttime routine to help you sleep so you can win the morning. And so that's why I think it's so important.
What are your non-negotiables for the morning?
My non-negotiables for the morning is I always wake up and work out. Working out is huge, not necessarily just physically, but mentally. I'm in my 40s now, and being able to work out, it's like, okay, it just helps my mind, get my mind going. Another thing that I do is I love to read. I love it. I have this, I want to consume. I feel like I'm a creator and I need to consume to create. You can't draw from an empty well. And so I love to consume, whether it be some journals, or I'll consume creative writing, or I'll consume a podcast, or I'll consume music, so that it'll fill me up to be able to know what I'm going to go out and create. And so I keep it simple. Those are the two: work out and then read, and then some writing will emerge from that. But that's it. You keep it simple for me.
What are you currently reading?
Currently, I am reading. I'm always kind of mixing in between things. I'm looking around at books that I have. So I'm reading Shane Parrish's mental model books. I'm rereading Thinking Fast and Slow, and I'm reading Trillion Dollar Coach. Trillion Dollar Coach. It's a good book about executive coach for some of the Silicon Valley. So just reading that, and I like to read multiple things as well, so that I can get different perspectives and a collection of different different pockets of knowledge, and then synthesize them, and who knows, maybe something new can come out of it. So that's what I really love to do.
Very cool. So the second high performance habit, do hard things. What's that about?
Yes. I think when you have a life of ease, it becomes easy to get sloppy. Our bodies get sloppy, our minds get sloppy, our attitudes get sloppy. And when you do hard things, you train your mind and you train your body to lean into resistance. And a lot of times when you lean into resistance, you get stronger, you get better. A lot of these elite athletes that I work with, it is very difficult to do what they do. They've cultivated a tolerance for doing hard things. And if you're going to do hard things, you also learn how to navigate your emotions. Doing hard things requires doing things even though you don't feel like doing it. That's a superpower. I don't feel like working out. That's why I need to go work out. I don't feel like reading. That's why I need to read. I don't feel like writing. That's why I need to go and write. When you feel that little resistance, and then you get stronger and stronger and stronger, and then you'll notice that your baseline is higher, and you're going to be able to tolerate more and tolerate more. And also, I really believe that success is not just a function of things you've achieved, but it's also a function of things you've overcome. When you can look back and start counting and listing all of the adversity that you have faced, all of the things that you've overcome, all of the hard things you have chosen to lean into, I think that's powerful. And I think when you embrace obstacles, embrace hard things, you're going to learn. You're going to become better as a result of it. And it's just so satisfying to know that you're improving through embracing these difficult things. And then I think when people start to learn how to do that, it's going to be so fulfilling. Now, it's going to be ugly. You're going to fail a lot of times, but that's part of the process. You have to play the long game.
And what was the last hard thing that you look back on and you're like, wow, I accomplished that. I'm proud of myself for that.
So the last hard thing I just did a cold plunge. Literally just now. We have a cold pool here at this hotel. Like, let me just get in there. Jumped in, and it was, and anyone who does it, a lot of people who do it all the time, they look so calm. I haven't done this in a long time. It was like, okay, like you just gotta do it. I try to put in a hard, I didn't feel like going to the gym today. Didn't feel like it. And so, hey, let me just go. It can be simple little things like that. I have a podcast. I'm on episode 1860. That's hard. That's hard to have that many episodes as long, and it's easy to be like, you know what, I'm not going to do it today. And then I think, you know what, there may be somebody who wants to listen to this, maybe somebody who's waiting for this. Let me stop feeling sorry for myself and get out there and do it. And so I'm very aware of some of those hard things that I lean into. Yesterday, I leaned into a very hard conversation. I wanted to ask a very difficult question to a person. I didn't know how they were going to respond. I could have been punched in the face, but you know what? Let's go do it. It's not for me. It's to help this person navigate some adversity. There's no one else who's going to ask them this question. And so little things like that, we can find those hard things and lean into hard things. It doesn't have to be climb Mount Everest. It doesn't have to be swim across the Panama Canal. Or what I don't even know if I said that right. It doesn't have to be something crazy. Just it can be little hard things. Like You don't feel like sending that text. You don't feel like confronting that person on the phone call. Do it. And it's amazing what you build as a result of it.
Yeah, I love that you highlighted small things, because the small things are actually the big things. For your podcast,
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you batch those or do you record those that day?
I record them that day. So a little so for those so my podcast, I'm on episode 1860, I believe. They're 2 to 5 minute podcasts, and it came from wanting to help people who don't have access to a process development coach or a leadership coach, because a lot of these parents or people, they just don't have, and they don't have time. And so I thought, let me make 2 to 3 minute mini quick burst podcast, something that's practical and applicable that we're using with these top performers for free. Let me get it out there. And I do it. And I usually, whatever I share that day on the podcast is what I talked about with someone the day before. And so it's literally things that I'm talking about every single day. It emerges throughout the day.
Wow, that's really cool. And I was also doing research for this, and I found out that sometimes in a meeting, you don't have, 30 minutes or 60 minutes to give a speech to the team that you're working with. And I figured, wow, that's so interesting that you have this podcast, and the podcast that's 2 to 5 minutes long is a great way to prepare for those speeches that you're going to give a mental minute. And I was like, wow, that's so brilliant. A great way to practice.
Absolutely right. Being able to, I think writing is an incredible tool to compress your thoughts. And I also think speaking within 2 to 3 minutes is another way. You can't be, and I use the word again, sloppy with your words. You have to learn how to compress it, tell a story, get to the point, come with the call to action at the end, and boom, and you're out. And I think you're absolutely right. It has helped me a lot with my ability to speak and to provide more nuggets of information in a short amount of time.
Yeah, so beautiful. And it's available for anyone really to do or try. So the third high performance habit, embrace feedback. What's this one all about?
Embrace feedback. In the world that I operate, these professional athletes, these top performers, they get immediate feedback. And it's one of the components of flow. So when you're a creator, you're flowing, and because you're getting immediate feedback and you're in the moment and you're learning how to make these little adjustments and you're in the moment. Professional athletes, they get their feedback from fans, hundreds of thousands, millions of people, and some of this feedback is not healthy, and it's actually terrible, some of the feedback that they get from people. But a lot of times, the best in the world, they want to get better. And so they want feedback on how to get better. I'll never forget one example in particular. There's a professional athlete who was one of the best in the league, and he was going through a drill, and the coach was saying, yeah, great job. Yeah, great job. Yeah, there you go. Good job. Great movement. And this player, he ends up stopping the drill, and he says, so are you going to help us or what? And the coach goes, what do you mean? He goes, we're the best in the world. He says this. And we get encouragement from the fans. We get encouragement for them. Great job. You're amazing. Your job as a coach is to take us to the next level. What am I doing wrong? How do I need to get better? My feet aren't perfect all the time. My hands aren't perfect all the time. Coach us up. You're my external eyes. Tell me what I need to do better. And from that moment, the coach started giving some good feedback, from very direct feedback on how these elite tip of the spear athletes could improve. And when did you know it? They started to get better. They started to appreciate it. And the coach was more respected as a result of it. We talk about a lot of times receiving feedback. You got to get better at receiving feedback. The next level is seeking feedback. Go to somebody and ask them, how can I get better? What can I do to improve? Now, I am a believer, I think mentors are great, but I don't believe in one size fits all mentors. You can't you might have a relationship person. You might have someone who's good at creativity. Then go to somebody else who's good at giving, who's good at having more of a rational mind. Go to somebody else who's better with fitness. And so making sure that you diversify your mentors and the people who you go to ask this feedback from, because if you go to the same person, nobody is the one stop fits all. And sometimes we have this halo effect where just because somebody is good at one thing, we think they're good at everything. I want every piece of advice, but no, they're just good at business. or maybe good at this other thing, but also this person's good at this and this person's good at this. And so I think it's helpful to diversify and go to those great subject matter experts. We need to curate, be very mindful to curate who we go to get that feedback from.
Yeah. And I noticed in one story that you mentioned how when you were building up in your career and had risen, it was actually harder for you to get feedback. And I think this is something that a lot of people might not think about is like, as you get better, it actually gets harder to know the truth. And how do you go about doing that and figuring that out as you continue to rise?
That is such a good point. Now, my job is different in particular, simply because it's a very unique as a process coach. Kind of a lot of people, it looks different for different people. But what I do is I use the internet to go in to find people, and I'll have people look at my writing or listen to this podcast. What am I missing here? I'll go and I'll seek out researchers and say, oh, you know what? I'm approaching this wrong, and maybe I could approach it a little bit better. So I have to be very deliberate on going out and constantly asking myself, where am I wrong? What am I doing wrong? Constantly. I'm always asking myself. And as a result, it has caused me to be less confident in what I say, to be real honest, but more accurate, I feel. Early in my career, I was very emphatic. On if you do this, then you'll be more confident. If you do this, then you'll be more focused. If you do this, it was very algorithm. But humans, we're not algorithms. It's more heuristics. We don't need prescriptions. We need perspectives. And so constantly questioning my own assumptions. And I love this quote by Phil Tetlock. He says, beliefs are hypotheses to be examined, not treasures to be guarded. Beliefs are hypotheses to be examined and not treasures to be guarded. And I think one thing that's helped me is to have strong beliefs loosely held and look for anyone who could really poke holes in my assumptions so that I can be better next time. I'm constantly looking for that every single day.
Was there a situation or a moment that highlighted your lack of emphaticness with the messages you were delivering?
Yes. Early, there have been a couple of teams where I would come in and I would provide, early in my career, like about a decade ago. Like, for example, we have the 10 high performance habits. I almost stay away from the 10 habits only because maybe we put an asterisk and say, and there are more, and there are more, and it looks different for everybody. But there was a moment where I think it came by a degree of a second order effect. So I'm part of these organizations who want to be the best, and we're in the zero-sum game where if other teams win, we lose. And so we kind of keep things in-house, we keep it tight. We don't want anyone to know what we're doing to try to optimize our culture and our leadership and our performance. But we'll bring in these experts and these gurus to teach us culture building and leadership. And they'll give us the 5 tips to elite culture, 7 skills on a communication. And then they're making all of these guarantees, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And to sit in a room with very skeptical people, if you come in and when you're emphatic, this group is like, you're here presenting your model and you don't even know us. You don't even know the dynamic of our ecosystem. You don't know what it's like, and you haven't even asked us about us. You just came in to give us your presentation. And so that's what really helped me understand that I need to start asking the questions, like, not necessarily. There have been moments where I presented in the military. I would say something early on in my career. This is the number one way to build confidence. And then a leader will raise his hand or her hand and say, actually, not necessarily. In our context, this works. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I go somewhere else and I'll present. I'll be like, actually, in this context, that doesn't work at all. This is what works. And as I'm going to all of these different places and having audiences kind of poke holes in what I'm saying, I learned very quickly to say, whoa, I need to come in and to really highlight the audience and really help them realize they're the experts. And here's what the research says, but it's loose. It's more frameworks and heuristics, and nothing is set in stone. But hopefully these principles can help you guide your own decision making. You want to be the ultimate decision maker. And so I no longer present hard, fast, this is the way to do it. I wish I would have learned that a little bit sooner, but I think I'm getting there now.
Yeah, you've said before, a lot of times you can get caught in the trap of thinking you're an advice and counsel giver. With more experience, you realize everyone is an expert of themselves. So true. When you realize that you're just there to ask questions, to prompt people to think about themselves in a more nuanced and interesting way, an insightful way, it gives people new information, and it stops creating this narrative of you being the person who has all the wisdom, and starts creating, we are all the authors of our own story, who, if we just have the right prompts or the right questions, we can unlock that. So my question to you is, what questions do you typically lead with or ask, or what frame of mind do you give people when you're trying to diagnose a problem?
Yeah, so it really depends on, there's so many different situations. Yeah. So it depends on the person, depends on their experience, it depends on what's going on. And so I'll tell you, here are all my considerations. What is the problem there? Because even though they say it's a problem, I won't accept that. That might not be the problem. How much time do we have? I will consider that. So do we have 15 seconds, which in some cases I only have 15 seconds, or do we have hours where I can really sit down and explore it? Who else is around? What is this person's role? Why did they come to me or did I go to them? What's the depth of our relationship? How honest can I be with them? How many times am I going to have a chance for a follow-up or no? Am I going to see them more often? So all of these things are running through my mind that's going to decide how I'm going to approach this situation. I'll give you a perfect example. In 1 week, I was asked the same question by 3 different people. The question was, how do I slow my heart? How do I quiet my mind? How do I quiet my mind? And so with the person number 1, we had a lot more time. I knew the person. I said, what do you mean by that? Okay, what does it mean to quiet your mind? How have you done it in the past? And we explored it and we sat through it. And at the end, he was like, whoa, he ended up realizing that he stopped doing things that he used to do that helped him. Meditation was one of them. He came to it. I just nudged him through these questions. And at the end, I said, okay, so it sounds like meditation is going to help you. And that's what you decided, right? You're the one who came up with that, making sure the person knows that I didn't have the answer. You're the one who came up with it. And he's like, yes. Conversation took about 45 seconds. Wow. Later in that week, another player comes up to me. We had about 30 seconds. And he comes up to me and says, hey, how do I quiet my mind? How do I quiet my mind? And I look at him and I said, okay, take a deep breath and just focus on your breath, on the exhale. And he does it. I said, all right. And he goes, I said, just be present. He's like, oh man, thank you. Perfect. And he goes out there and he performs. Same week, another person comes up to me and goes, how do I quiet my mind? I slap him on the chest. I'm like, you're good. He's like, you're right. You're right. I was like, good. Like, let your mind just go wherever it wants. Same question, 3 different people, 3 different contexts, 3 different situations, 3 different responses from me. So all of that's just the nature of my job. I don't know how it's going to be, but some common questions I love to ask is, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that is so powerful. When someone shares things with you, what do you mean by that? I want definitions too. Hey, I want to build my confidence. What do you mean by confidence? How do you define it? What builds it? What destroys it? What have you noticed about it? Let's put confidence on the table and let's make sure we're both operating from the same definitions. I want to operate from your definition. And sometimes I have to kind of poke holes in their definition, and then that helps them as well. They're like, oh, I'm defining it wrong. I'm defining success wrong. Another question I love is to ask is, have you experienced this before? Like when in your past, because I love them to realize that, oh, I have done this before. Let's go back and use what you've done in the past to be able to answer this question right here. And so I love to do that as well. Another question that I love to ask is, so what else? So they'll ask a question. I was okay, what else? Okay, what else? Okay, you're saying this and what else? And then what else? So once they go and they share with me the situation and they just put it all on the table and they scrape the bottom of the bucket, and I'll say, what else? And they're like, yeah, that's it. That's it. So, okay, great. And then comes my next question. So what are you going to do about it? And they sit back and like, oh, okay. all right, I'm going to do this. Immediately, I want to shift their brain into problem-solving mode. Right now, it's been, okay, I'm a pawn. All these things are happening to me. These are all things happening to me. And then a simple question, what are you going to do about it? Now that re-engages their focus to focus on taking action, what they can control, like we talked about in the beginning. And so if anyone is listening to this and you're going through adversity and you're struggling, grab a blank sheet of paper and you just start writing down, okay, I'm struggling with this and this and this and this. And then at the bottom, you write in big letters and circle it. What am I going to do about it? And then sometimes the answer is nothing. Sometimes you're like, you know what? We have the action bias where you think you can do something. Sometimes you look and you're like, well, I'm sleeping. I'm trusting the process. I'm doing this. Okay. You know what? Stay the course. Stay the course. Keep doing it. Keep doing what I'm doing. And I run into that a lot. But yeah, those are some of my favorite questions to ask.
So powerful. And how do you quiet your mind example with the 3 different, so powerful and so interesting how people will, it shows your flexibility as a coach, and it shows your ability to look at the scenario, look at the situation, and ask questions about it and know what to do immediately. And that's what I'm guessing 10 plus years of experience in the field has done. Let's continue on with these high performance habits. The 4th one, learn from failure. What's that all about?
This is so important. Learning from failure. That's one of the reasons. The thing that is keeping a lot of people from success is their relationship with failure. They hate it. They avoid it. They will even not try as hard. So the ego in them can say, "Oh, I failed because I did try hard. I did try hard." They don't set high goals because of the odds of them failing. They don't go after what they want because the failure is going to be so painful. And we say, yes, failure is painful. And in some cases, it's embarrassing. However, the way to learn, the way to use failure as fuel is to pull as many lessons as you can from it. What can I learn from failure? What did it teach me? How can it make me stronger? Where was I unlucky? Because a lot of times when we fail, we notice that we were just unlucky in some things. Maybe you did everything you possibly could correct, and you got a bad bounce. Something out of your control that you did not account for happened, and there's nothing you could do about it. And that leads to failure. Now, one of the early exercises that I love to do with people who struggle with failure, if someone listening to this and you're struggling with failure, look back on your past failures. A lot of people don't even want to look at them. They don't even want to examine them. Kobe Bryant has a great thing. He was working with a young college basketball player, and she had a terrible game. And he said, okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to play the tape, and you're going to watch the worst game of your career and stare at it. You're going to stare at your failures. And she goes on to say how difficult that was for her. But Kobe was like, if you want to be great, you have to be willing to stare at your failures in the face. And that exercise is powerful. Look back at past failures in your relationships, in your jobs, and hold yourself accountable. What did I do or what did I not do that led to that failure? And sit with it and embrace it. And it's going to drum up some very uncomfortable feelings. But also, you also want to ask, what did I learn from it? How did it make me stronger? How did it make me better? So that you can take those lessons and use them to move on with your life when you experience it again. Yes, you're going to fail again. And a phrase that I love is, making new mistakes is making progress in disguise. You're going to make mistakes, but make sure you're making new ones, and then you iterate, and then make a new one, and then iterate, and you just stick with it and stick with it and stick with it. And part of it as well is in order to learn from failure, you need to know what your first principles are. Who are you? Take away, aside from your job, who are you as a person? What are your values? What do you love? What is your why? What is your purpose? So, because when you fail, you need to realize that failure is an event. It doesn't define who you are. It's not a label, I am a failure. I failed. And so we want to put it outside of us so we can examine it from a distance. And I think this is a powerful principle that we can all learn from. I think athletes do it really great because they have to every single day, but I think we could do it with our own lives every single day.
Why do you think we make it our identity when we fail, or when we win for that matter, of attaching ourselves to that outcome?
I think I think it happens. I think there's a biological component to it as well, because when we fail, there's a visceral feeling. There's an emotional, it's encoded in our brain because we don't like to fail. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you touch something hot, like, ooh, that hurts. That was a physical pain. And now you're even tentative to do it again. You're tentative. You don't want to do it again because you learned from that failure. It was painful. You don't want to experience that again. Now, in some cases in our lives, making the sale, you psychologically touch that hot stove through pain and failure, and your brain is saying, don't do that again. Don't do that again. Don't make that call again. Don't open up your heart up again to another person. Don't go out after your dreams again. And also, people who have failed to protect others will tell them, hey, don't go after your dreams. Don't try to open that business because I failed. It's painful. I love you. Go get a secure job. Go be safe. Play it safe because what you're about to do, the odds are very likely you're going to fail. And I don't want that for you. So go do the safe job. And so I think a lot of it's attached to our identity, and just because it's encoded in our memories because of that loss aversion. Losing feels more painful than winning feels good. After we win, it's like, okay, we win. There's no psychological, there's no emotional trigger to it, a memory encoding nature of functionality to it. There is, but not as much with failure. So that's why I think it happens. We're just naturally avoiding it because we don't want to feel the pain of failure.
It's interesting. In 2011, I read in a BYU article that was published in 2016 that you failed at starting your own business, Sue Sports Psychology. What did you learn from that? And how did you embrace that moment to build and create better things in your life?
Yeah, oh my goodness, that was such a great memory. So after I got my master's degree, I was like, I'm going to go open a business. And again, 3 kids. I said goodbye to my cushy teaching job, which was not cushy at all. 3 kids in diapers. I'm like, yeah, this is easy. I can go do it. It was so hard. I lacked every competency, skill that is needed to start a business. I just jumped into it. Oh, anyone can do it. I had no respect for the game. I had no respect for the process, for entrepreneurship. I had no respect for it. And I failed miserably. And it was stressful. And it put a lot of strain on my marriage. It put a lot of strain on my kids. It put a lot of strain on my finances. And I learned so many lessons of the power, the importance of respecting entrepreneurship, respecting the business aspect, respecting the finance, and respecting building a foundation. You can't just go out and just go do that. And at least respecting the fact that I wanted to go out. I didn't want a job. I didn't want to have an employer and say, okay, no, I don't need this. I'm going to go out myself. I didn't respect having a contingency plan, having a net, being able to say, okay, let me be smart about this. And so I learned a very valuable lesson really quick, and needed to make an adjustment and very quickly because our family's life is dependent on it.
And I'm sure at that moment you needed to employ number 5, which is choosing your attitude.
Yeah, I believe that our attitude is one of the most important decisions we make when we walk out the door every single day. Now, it might sound cliche, it might sound soft, but choosing your attitude is as simple as, okay, how do I want to show up today? Imagine that. Imagine before you walk into a room, before you walk into a party, before you walk into work, hey, how am I going to how do I want to show up today? How do I want to be? What's my body language? Just pausing to ask yourself that question and answering that question puts you in the driver's seat, as opposed to just allowing your feelings to kind of get you and kind of, and again, I'm all for authenticity and being yourself as well. Some days you're going to have bad days and you can't be fake all the time, and it takes a lot of energy, but to pause and say, okay, especially in a leadership role, because when you're a leader, people are watching you, and your emotions are contagious. When something happens, good or bad, they're going to watch, your people are going to watch the leader, how that leader, he or she responds to it, to give them permission on how to respond to it. And so I think choosing how your attitude is. What's your attitude around success? What's your attitude around failure? What's your attitude around stress? Choosing that and being mindful of your current attitude. How am I coming off right now? I think that shows a lot of situational awareness, emotional intelligence, And I think it's critical for the group setting, individuals, and even in a one-on-one. I think it's very important.
Okay, so let's say somebody is going to a party. They're listening to this on a Wednesday afternoon, but they're going to a party on Saturday, and it's with a bunch of people they kind of know but kind of don't, acquaintances, some might say. How would you recommend that person talks to themselves before going to that party?
I like the connection that you made between talking to yourself and attitude. And I think that's powerful. I want to highlight that. Stop listening to yourself, start talking to yourself. Because when you start listening to yourself, a lot of it's just negative. Why do I have to go to this? I'm going to be embarrassed. No, I'm not going to know anybody. This is going to be terrible. What if I fail? That we just tend to have that negativity bias. But when you talk to yourself, you're going to ask yourself questions like, okay, how do I want to show up? Okay, these are my acquaintances. Can I bring the best out of other people? How can I be more interested instead of appear interesting? How can I veer from, do I have any tendencies that can veer me away from showing up? Am I going to come off as a pompous, status signaling jerk? Or am I going to come in humble and care more about other people? How much time am I going to spend there? Is there somebody I know? So it's kind of game planning. And as you can notice by what I'm doing, I'm asking myself questions. Because yes, you can do statements as well. I think that's great. But what I love about questions is that if you want better answers, ask yourself better questions. And when you start asking yourself questions, you're forcing your mind to answer those questions. So for example, if you think to yourself, why do I suck? Why am I so terrible? Why do I always do this? Your beautiful brain is going to go back and look at, oh, here's why you suck. Here's why you always do it. Here. But if you ask yourself questions like, okay, what am I going to do to get better? How do I get the best out of this party with these people I don't know, with these acquaintances? Your brain's going to be like, oh, let me go and find those answers. Maybe you can do this. How about you do this? And so I'm a huge fan of asking yourself better questions. And I would even grab a blank sheet of paper once again and highlight these questions you want to ask yourself every single day. There's an athlete I'm working with who I worked with, and he asked himself 3 questions at the end of every day. These are questions I used to ask my kids, but he loves to ask them for himself. What did I do well? Because he's very hard on himself. We're all very hard on a lot of us. Some of us are more hard on ourselves than anyone else could be on us. And so he had to force himself to look for the good. What did I do well today? Number 2, what did I learn from myself, from others? And number 3, what am I going to do better tomorrow? He asked himself those questions at the end of every single day. And what's amazing is his brain knows he's going to ask those questions. And so now his brain is scanning the environment, looking for those answers and kind of leaning in to those answers and to be the best version of himself. And he told me, this is his own words, he goes, that's been a game changer for my life. He's like, it's made me a better husband. It's made me a better athlete. And again, it's not the magic in the question. It's the power of being able to self-reflect through questions. And so going back to your question, I think start finding what questions can you ask yourself to get you into the best frame of mind and best approach going into that party.
Yeah. And I love the reflection piece of it. Sometimes we think of reflection being a long meditation session or taking a therapy session, but like it literally could be 3 questions that can take 3 minutes and make it simple for yourself. Make it quick, make it easy. And I actually am going to use this opportunity to set up a lead magnet for my own website where I have 77 great questions that I've collected over the past 3 years from doing this podcast and looking up to great interviewers. I'm going to make those available for everyone. So thank you for that prompt.
That's awesome.
And I appreciate you tremendously.
Awesome.
6-1 is from Nick Bear. Would really appreciate the 6-1, which is do one more. What is do one more about? And are you familiar with Nick Bear any chance?
I'm not. Tell me.
Oh my God.
Tell me about Nick.
Nick Bear is a great entrepreneur out of Austin, Texas, who is I believe he does marathon training and Ironman training as well as lifting real heavy weights, and has set up this company called BPN. The slogan for BPN, Bear Performance Nutrition, is go one more. And so that's why I bring him up.
I like that. I think we're probably on the same page with this. The premise of doing one more is pushing a little bit towards the edge, just expanding your circle just a little bit more, going back to doing hard things. Because when you want to do one more, you never know what the possibilities are. And if you get into this habit of doing one more, once again, you start building the engine of what you're capable of. If you constantly just do the bare minimum, you're building that engine. Kobe, again, going to use a Kobe Bryant, when he talks about his training, he says it's about the math. Just do the math. If you do one more and the competition is not, you're just building this library, this engine that is just better. And again, you don't need to compare yourself to anybody else, but whatever it is you do, reading one more page, writing one more paragraph, one more sentence, one more word, your one more doesn't have to be one more marathon. It could be one more step, one more tiny little movement, little half of a percent. It doesn't have to be 1%. It could be 0.0% of one. That could be one more for you. And so basically it's just approach that you're not settling for the status quo. You're willing to do hard things. And also when you do one more, it requires you to be present. You have to be here in the moment right now and make a decision that, you know what? I don't feel like it, but I'm going to do one more. It helps you with that decision-making faculties, that faculty that, you know what, I am going to choose to do one more. Because the default is like, nah, okay, call it in. I'm going to choose to do one more. Again, I want to put a little caveat to this: health and energy, and we don't want burnouts. I'm not talking about that. I can hear people poking holes in this and so forth, but this is for, all of these are general principles aimed to help somebody who might need this principle in their life, because there might be somebody here listening to this and they're just doing the bare minimum, whatever it is, fitness, creating, writing, whatever it is, making phone calls, sales. If you keep doing one more and then you stack wins and then you document it and then you look and you're like, wow, look at all these extra steps I took, these extra reps I took, you're just going to get so much better in the future. And so that's why I'm a huge fan of doing one more. It's more of of building the engine.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you said a couple of things that I feel like are caveats and nuances in a world that it's so funny, because I feel like the world, in some sense, the world that we live in has gotten a little bit soft. And it's like we are so hard pressed to say it's not about competition. We don't want you to burn out. And I appreciate all those things. But it's like, if you are listening to this podcast, you want to be the best version of yourself. And the best version of yourself is going to need to do things that the current version of yourself cannot do. And so I so strongly want to push back against the what if you burn out? What if you, and I understand it's important that came into the discussion, but what if like that is too soft? What's your take on all of that perspective as somebody who works with professional athletes and military?
Exactly. It is this constant ebb and flow. The example that I always use is that of a pit crew. The pit crew. You have these high performing NASCAR drivers driving these cars going at incredible speeds, and they'll go and go and go at high. There's alignments and they go, but then they have to take a pit stop. And these pit stops are seconds. They go, stop, and then they go. They need that pit stop to be able to take these stops to be able to keep going, so that if they don't have a pit stop, they're end up burning out. They're not going to be, the machine isn't going to be able to have the long haul. And so I think with the athletes that I work with, there's this high, yes, you go incredibly hard, but also you need to account for recovery as well so that you can go hard. But we also say that you are a lot more capable than you think. These elite performers are very capable. You might look at some of their schedule and you're like, oh, you're going to burn out. The average person is going to look at them and say, wait, you're obsessed. It's like, yes, I'm obsessed. I want to be the best in the world. We're trying to be champions of the world. I'm working, I'm training, I'm devouring this knowledge, this video to get better. And I'm working really hard. Yes, I need to eat right. Yes, I need to sleep. Yes, I need to do my recovery modalities so that I can continue to be the best in the world. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think these professional athletes have this right balance between obsession and recovery so that they can continue to be obsessed. But I think there are people sitting on the couch and hearing things about being great and saying, oh, I don't want to burn out, using it as an excuse for them not pushing hard. Oh, I don't want to burn out. I don't want to burn. I don't want to win in the morning. I don't want to wake up early. I don't want to work out. I don't want to get injured. But really, it's a facade. They're hiding behind this curtain of maybe fear of failure. Maybe they don't want to pursue it. So they come up with these. A lot of times, skeptics are perceived to be more intelligent than optimists. And I'm trying to poke holes. Well, you didn't consider this. You didn't consider this. It's like, okay, and the people who are going to go for it, they're the ones who are changing the world.
Yeah, and often the skeptic might be right more times than the optimist, but the optimist is going to have greater outcomes. Is how I think about it.
The people who I work with every single day, we talk about this. The odds of them making it to the NFL, the odds of them making it to the Major League Baseball since they were kids, they all defied odds. Every single one of them to make it to the tippity top of the spear in professional sports or Silicon Valley, or to make it as in entrepreneurship, the odds are against you. And they knew it. They're like, yeah, I knew I had a 1% chance to come here, but no one's going to tell me not to stop. And here I am. So my sample size that I work with every day, they are all odd defiers. Every single one of them. They're here. They're not supposed to be here. And so that's why I love our conversations, is because they had a lot of people who told them to take the safe route. Don't go hard. What if you fail? And they're like, no, I'm going to go for it because I love this. And so, yeah, it's interesting.
And it's a lot easier to do that, to go one more and to be obsessed and to also prioritize recovery when you're living on purpose, which is the 7th high performance habit. Live on purpose with purpose. What does that mean?
Yeah, on purpose with purpose. So on purpose, I'll use a gym analogy. On purpose means going into the gym with a plan. You're not just going to walk in and be like, what am I going to work today? What am I going to do today? And then with purpose is whatever your plan is, your mind is focused on this workout. You're not thinking about yesterday. You're not thinking about what you're going to do after the gym. You are on purpose. You have a plan. And then with purpose, you are right here, right now. And so that not just applies to the gym, it just applies to life. What's your plan for the day? What are you living into your purpose today? And here's another thing. I'm not talking about capital P purpose. That's a whole life journey. Some people, you might not know your life's purpose ever. Some people might not ever. But what's your purpose for this week? What's your purpose for today? What's your purpose for this minute, this hour? That's what I'm talking about. Finding, you might not know, what am I going to do in life? That's not an excuse to not know what you're going to do today. What are you going to do today? Even though you might not know what direction you are headed, live today on purpose with purpose. And a kind of corollary principle is called the goal gradient effect, where humans tend to accelerate speed when they see the finish line close. The closer you get to the finish line, the faster you end up running. That's the goal gradient effect. And once you pass that finish line, all of a sudden you decelerate and you hit the brakes and go. So what you could apply this principle here is, what's your finish line for today? Go for it. And then once you cross it, what's the next one? And then what's the next one? And then what's the next one? And then as you start to gain momentum and start to stack small wins and live on purpose with purpose, you're going to start to notice some very interesting patterns. You might even start to develop a passion. You might start to develop a love. You might start to develop a new talent, a skill that you didn't even know existed. And once you know it, it completely alters your life. Living life on purpose with purpose. That's what I mean by that.
I love it so much. And it is so interesting because I'm somebody personally who spends a lot of time thinking about personal development, how I can be the best version of myself. But I recently read Bob Bowman's book. Bob Bowman was Michael Phelps's coach, and he just outlined a simple idea, which is what are you trying to accomplish this week? And what are the daily action steps that you can take from that week and put it into actionable items for that day? And it's such a simple idea. And many people who have heard about this idea have heard it before and actually not done it. And I was one of those people. 3 weeks ago, I started doing this for the first time, and I'm starting to see incredible gains professionally, personally, in the gym, everything, just from listing out the things that I want to accomplish that week and breaking them down to daily actions. And I'm like, it's that simple? And I'll link the book down below because I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But Bob Bowman, future podcast guest, but also just like really a simple but brilliant thing that if actually executed will change your life.
I like how you used it twice, the word simple. And simple doesn't equate to easy, but it's simplicity. The simplicity of it is huge. A lot of times we try to make things more difficult than it is and more complicated than it is. But how can you simplify? And in order to simplify, you need to say no to a lot of things. You need to say no to this, no to that. But when you give yourself a goal and action items that you can control, all of a sudden it just drowns out the noise. All of a sudden you put blinders on and you have this myopic attention keeping the main thing. And we talk about that all the time. The main thing is to keep the main thing, Stephen R. Covey's quotes. And when you have these kind of a purpose, you're able to have a main thing. And when you have the main thing, it melts away all the other ancillary and peripheral things to help you just focus on this task right here, right now. I love that. I love what you said.
And also like when you're doing things that are outside of the things on your list, it helps be like, oh wow, I am not actually executing on the mission right now. Is there a reason for that? And it just made me so much more aware. So simple, but so profound.
I'm very mindful of questions people just ask. What you just did, I want to highlight something that you just did for the audience. You just did this, and I think it's not talked about enough. And you're probably aware that you did it. So replacing curiosity with judgment. When you make a bad decision, when you go at the end of the day and you're like, oh, I didn't do what I said I was going to do. Oh, I procrastinated. Oh, I didn't do this, whatever. Replace your judgment of yourself with curiosity. You just did that in that question. You said, oh, I wonder why I'm not doing that. That's curiosity. Then you stop. You take a look. What was the system like? What was my energy like? Did I sleep? Okay, what were all the potential components to why I didn't do that thing? And then you just make the adjustments as opposed to, I knew it. I'm terrible at this. I always procrastinate. I always do that. That's more of the judgment. There's someone listening to this, and they need to replace their self-judgment with curiosity. Be more curious about your situation. Maybe design your environment to be better. Maybe it's put your phone somewhere else. Maybe you need to create some more constraints, some different processes in your life to make your goals and make your behavior easier with less friction. I love that you just modeled that.
That's a really great call out. Thank you so much for highlighting that. The 8th one, recommit every day. What's that one about?
Going back to what we said with our family question, the best part about today is you never lived this one before. Today is an opportunity to recommit. You've never lived this day before. It's opportunity to get better, to lead better, to train better, to prepare better. It's literally a clean slate. It is a clean slate. And to be able to recommit to your goals and to recommit to yourself, because the alternative is like, it's over. I'm done. I ate that pizza last night. I'm done. I didn't do what I said I was going to do. It's over. No, we're playing the long game. We got to think in decades. You are thinking about the future you. And as the phrase goes, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. And so replant that tree and recommit right now. Do it again. And as many times as you have to come back to recommit, that'll keep you on track. Because again, the alternative is to not recommit and to let yesterday drag into today and then spiral. And then all of a sudden the big snowball effect. And then you're a week, a month, a year, and you're like, oh, now you've gotten so far off track. And then the inertia of getting back to where you were. So constantly making little correction, recommit to your destination every single day. I once heard that a rocket, a plane, as they're flying to their destinations, they're off track a lot. And then they get back. They're off track, get back, off track, get back. And we need to do that with ourselves as well. Yes, we need to notice when we're off track and then get back. A helpful reminder of this, a lot of times it happens invisibly in our minds with our thoughts. And so we employ a tool called the mental rumble strips. And so mental rumble strips is simply writing down all of your irrational, nagging, negative thoughts. All of them. Most of us, we want to avoid them. We don't want to write them down. We don't even want to think about them. But no, in this exercise, you write them down. So you write all of them down. And then what you do is is they serve as mental rumble strips. So when you're driving on the highway here in the United States and you run over a rumble strip, it vibrates the entire car. It's a signal to you to either A, wake up, you're drowsy, or B, you're losing focus, get back into the lane. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to identify focus isn't just something you have, it's something you do. And so whenever you hit those mental rumble strips, I'm bad, what if I fail? That should be a instead of a signal that you're a terrible person and you're mentally weak, that should be a signal that, oh, I'm losing focus. Let me get my mind back on what matters. What can I control? What are my values? What's my purpose? What do I need to do right now? And so it might be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be a question to get you back on track. And so I think that's a critical part of this principle, to be able to notice when you're off track and then get you back on track. And it's just constantly off on. You're just recommitting every day, recommitting to this moment every day.
Yeah, a couple of things. First is that this is the third time you've mentioned just getting out a pen and paper and writing down what is going on in your mind. Once we see it, it makes such a huge difference. The second thing I want to ask you about is you've recommitted to sports psychology, helping people with their minds, helping people live with purpose for the past decade plus. But you didn't recommit to being a teacher. Why not? And what was the difference there when you're like, I don't want to teach in this capacity? I would argue you're still a teacher, but like in that way, why did you stop teaching in a way that you were before? And what has allowed you to recommit to the things you're doing now?
You said the answer right there. I am still teaching. I am still teaching to this day. The audience has changed. The population has changed. The classroom has changed. The way it's happening has changed, but I am no longer a high school teacher, Mr. Sua in the classroom with teenagers. I don't no longer do that. And so I have evolved I didn't even know this was possible 15 years ago. I had no clue that this was even a thing. And it is accelerated. The field is even getting more and more popular as time goes. But I think, I would argue that I am still a teacher. I firmly believe it. But the how is the who, the when is all changed. The why is the same. The why is the same, trying to help people focus on what they can control and do things on purpose with purpose. But the audience, it looks a little bit different than it did before.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. How do you know when is the right time to pivot and express your purpose in a different way?
I like that word you used. When my son was 8, we were eating dinner. And by the time he was 8, he had seen me as a teacher. He saw me working with the military. He saw me working at IMG Academy. He saw me working the Red Sox. He saw me working the Browns. He saw, probably less, 3 or 4. He saw me as a waiter, as a baseball coach. And we're all eating. He goes, "Dad, I want to be like you when I grow up." I said, as a dad, when you hear your child say that, you're like, "Oh, tell me why, son. Why do you want to be like me?" He goes, "I want to be a quitter when I grow up." I said, "Wait, what?" He goes, "Yeah, Dad, you're a quitter. You quit a lot." I'm like, "What do you mean I quit?" He goes, "Yeah, you're a teacher and you quit. You're a baseball coach and you quit. You work in the military and you quit." I was like, wait a minute. Okay. Let me teach you a new word. And the word is pivot. I pivoted. I didn't quit. I'm trying to explain a deep concept to an 8-year-old. At the end of the day, he's like, "Yeah, you still quit." And so, but the reality is, I love your question. I love the word. Whenever I hear the word pivot, I think about that experience because, yes, there's been a number of pivots. I am very aware of where I am at internally. I am aware of if I notice that I follow my curiosity. If I notice that my curiosity is leading, I follow it. I chase the clues. If I notice myself thinking about something often, if I notice myself getting stale, if I notice myself not being able to provide the help that I need, if I notice that I have hit my circle of competence and I need to be uncomfortable. If I'm getting too comfortable, then I know, okay, I need to change. I need to be rocked. I need to be humbled. I need to go out there and step outside my comfort zone because I really enjoy that. I really enjoy uncertainty. I enjoy stepping into places that are uncomfortable, where I don't really know what I'm doing. That I love that. And when I notice that I'm starting to get there, that's where I start to think, okay, I might need to adjust what I'm currently doing.
I notice a cultivation of awareness in that. What other ways, other than writing down your thoughts, do you cultivate awareness?
I think listening. I will listen to different people. I'll listen to podcasts like yourself, people who have made I just love to listen to people, and I love to hear how they talk and how they speak and their stories. I think that helps me with my awareness, listening to the stories of others, learning from others. I believe you accelerate learning by being willing and able to learn from the success and failures of other people. I think that's powerful as well. My wife is incredible. She helps me and notices, and she notices. She's my outside eyes and ears, and she will obviously say things to me that nobody else has permission to tell me. And the way she does it, just when you have those loved ones around you to hit you with the truth, things that you might not want to hear, but you need to hear. She's outstanding as well. But yeah, those are different things that I notice and I learned, and both internally, externally surround myself with people who ask me questions, who pose difficult questions for me that I chew on, that I really think about, and I can't answer immediately. It might take a week or so to answer, and so that's how I do.
Speaking about your wife, what happened one night when she turned off the lights?
So early in my career, I was in school. I was a high school teacher. We had 3 kids, and I would always say I was going to get into this industry. Once I learned about it, I was like, oh, I'm going to be into sports psychology. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to help kids. I really wanted to focus on kids. And I would say it for a long time. She's my number one supporter. She's the best. Whatever you want to do, babe, go do it. Go do it. Go do it. And one night, I'm verbalizing my dreams. This is what I'm going to do. And I go to right before bed, and I go to turn the lights off. I turn the lights off, and she goes, "You're all talk." After I get done just sharing my dream, she goes, "You're all talk." And I sit there and I pause. I'm like, there's no way she just said that. There's no way she just said that to me. She's the encourager. I turn the light back on and I look at her. I thought she was joking. I said, "Wait, what?" She goes, "You've been talking about chasing your dreams for about a year or so." And she goes, "You've done nothing. You've done nothing. You're all talk." That was literally the moment that changed the trajectory of my life. I could point a finger on that and say, that was the moment. The person who I love more than anyone, who hit me in the face and said, "You are all talk. You're speaking a big game. You have done nothing. You have done nothing." And it doesn't even go to school. I haven't created anything. Not a podcast, not a nothing. I haven't read books. I'm just talking a big game. And the next morning, I was reaching out to schools, and I got into a school in sports psychology, performance psychology, and the rest is history. That was back in 2007, I believe, or 8. Yeah, it was. I'll never forget that night. And
you didn't go to sleep that night.
Life has changed ever since. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't sleep. Just sat there thinking. I'm like, she's like, I thought she's right. I'm all talk. I am all talk. I've been talking a big game, but I have not done anything about it.
It's so interesting how somebody's constructive feedback or harsh words in the moment are actually our biggest blessing or gift, the thing that propels us to action. So it's remarkable cultivating those people in your life and figuring out how to surround yourself with people like that, I think is so, so important.
Absolutely.
9th one we have here is be patient.
Be patient is huge because it's all about the long game. We're playing the long game. I think it's important for us to realize that it's not going to come all at once. One of my favorite examples is that of the law of the bamboo tree. When you take a bamboo seed and you plant it in the earth and you water it every single day for a year, you'll see no growth. Water it year 2, no growth. Year 3, year 4, until it grows 90 feet in year 5. But that was after years of watering it. But unbeknownst to you, underneath the surface, it was growing this collection, this root system that was going to sustain and support the tremendous growth that was going to happen later. And so we need to understand that it's a long game. Keep watering the bamboo. You might not see the results today, but keep sticking with it. Keep pounding, keep chopping chopping wood, keep pounding the stone, because you never know when you're going to turn it around.
It's so interesting because that falls in line with James Altucher's theory about it taking 5 years to transform your identity. He said he's seen this pattern happen over and over again, where the first year you're doing something new, you're learning about it, learning who to talk to. The second year, you have a good idea of the key players in the industry, and you're kind of finding your footing. The third year, you make a little bit of money. The fourth year, you make a little bit more money. And the fifth year, you're rich. That's his theory and what he's seen over and over. I'm curious, have you found that to be true from your experience with such a wide array of people?
What's hard about pro sports is it's a zero-sum game, and there's a lot of different variables with professional athletes, from health to competition. I think in a positive-sum game, yes, like you could absolutely do that. I've seen athletes who train, who work, but they got a career-ending injury that changed everything. And then they go and they go through a lot. It's very difficult, and they change their life. But I think the basic principle of that is absolutely correct. The process, the timeline is different for everybody. But to know that, hey, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. I think if we have that approach and trust the process, we always say that, trust the process. But in order to trust the process, you need to have the process. You need to work the process. You need to execute the process every single day. A lot of times you hear people say, trust the process. Okay, what process? Okay, create it, work it, then you can trust it and build it.
What do you tell an athlete who's just ending their career because of an injury or something like that? They come to you, they're like, I don't have a process anymore. What do I do now?
I learned this when I was with the military. One of the groups I worked with was warriors in transition, and in other words, wounded warriors. They loved what they did, and now because of combat or whatever, now they cannot do what they love. They literally had to find a brand new identity, a new purpose to their lives, because not only could they not do their job, but it's going to affect their quality of life. Everything. Now they had 4 limbs, now they have 2. They were able-bodied, and now they're completely burned from head to toe. Those are some of my favorite stories that I've ever seen in my life. So inspiring to see those things. But it's really sitting down and helping. It's a long term. You can't say anything to them. They need just to learn, and need somebody alongside to help, and their family, to help them through this process and building new systems and building a new identity, which is very, very difficult. It's a very long process that it takes years and years, and depends on injury, depends on how, but it's a very difficult process that sometimes I don't think people realize is so hard for some of these athletes and performers.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is you got to sit with the person and care for them.
Yes.
The 10th high performance habit to round us out is fear no one. What does that mean exactly?
Fear no one. We live in a world where in competitive sports we put too many people on pedestals. And when we put people on pedestals, we leave ourselves susceptible to beating up on ourselves, comparing ourselves to them. Oh, they're smarter than me. They're better than me. They're more financially stable than me. I can never achieve that level of success. And what I mean by fear no one, and we could put a caveat, but respect everyone, is I can learn from everybody. I can learn from them. I think what we're getting out of hand sometimes is people, myself included, are building these followers of people are putting people on pedestals and saying, oh, they are the way, they are so smart, they know everything, when the reality is, no, like people, even the smartest people in the world, they don't have everything all figured out. No one is perfect. And now to hold me accountable, whenever I read any kind of book, any journal article, to hold myself accountable to not fall into admiration of the person, and I'm still learning from them. I always ask myself, under what conditions is this not true? And what do I disagree with this person? Just because I'm obviously learning so much, but it keeps me adaptable and flexible, because I think when we constantly agree with all the people we admire, all of a sudden we fall into groupthink, and we just start, oh yeah, what they say is true. What they say is true. No, they could be completely bonkers. No, that is terrible advice. But because we like the person, because we hold them on a pedestal, we're just, yes, that's true. No, No, that's not true all the time. Actually, I disagree with that person says. And so I think it's important to also not fall for survivorship bias. We look at these people who succeed and we say, I'm going to adopt all of their habits. I'm going to do what they did because I'm going to have the same success. When we don't understand why they did it, we don't understand their context and what they do, they might be succeeding in spite of their what their process is. It might be a terrible process. There may be someone who is not well known, who has a way better process, but they're not known or they haven't won. But we discount that person or that group, that company, because they're not headlining. They're not on the covers of Sports Illustrated or these famous magazines. And so that's what I mean by that is don't get enamored by people or organizations to the point to where you just start drinking the Kool-Aid and discounting the fact that they're human too, and they are not perfect, and they might be succeeding in spite of their processes, not because of them.
I've never thought about when you put somebody on a pedestal, how you're actually fearing them. That is a really interesting and insightful comment and perspective, because inherently if someone's above you, they can do whatever they want to you and they have power over you. But if you look at them at eye level, you have less fear for them and more actually seeing them as they are. So it's really, really insightful. Yeah.
And going back to getting feedback, when someone's above, we perceive them above them, they're smart, they're on this pedestal, we're less likely to give them critical feedback. We're less likely to tell them it's just a natural thing. So it just helps you level out to be able to feel comfortable to be able to give that person feedback or to share what your thoughts are. And you might not even know the person. You might be giving them feedback just by yourself and you never talk to that person. And so I think it just keeps us accountable and helps us make our own decisions and not let somebody, an author, someone who's really smart, an athlete, tell me how to live my life. They might give suggestions. Okay, it's just a suggestion. That actually will not work for me right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because when I have these conversations with people, I'm looking at people in the eyes and seeing them. But when you're listening to a podcast, you're viewing it from like, these two people are on a pedestal. And I try to bring that down for people listening as much as possible, of like, just a normal guy, like asking questions to really smart and brilliant people. And those people could be wrong in some ways as well. But it's a difference of looking at somebody versus looking up to somebody. And I'm really grateful for you for highlighting that difference there. Justin, thank you so much for spending the time with me here today. You're really wise. I love all the ways in which you've broken down high performance, and I love all the ways you continue to add nuance to that conversation. I appreciate you so much. And where can we send people to connect with you further?
I think the best place is Twitter at Justin Sua at Twitter. You can find me there. All the social media accounts, same handle, but yeah, I'm pretty accessible on all social media accounts.
Awesome. All of those linked below. Thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, Danny. Thanks, brother.